Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Last week, there was a new ClimateGate bombshell that didn't get as much attention as it should have, that more universities and institutions have been caught trying to cover up the fact that global warming has stopped in the last 19 years or so and actually declined in the last 6 or 7. And that NASA knows this, the different meteorological services like NOAA know this, and are desperate to keep propping it up as they segue onto weather change being abnormal. Oh my gosh, it's snowing in winter. Pay David Rockefeller money. Oh my gosh, it's hot in the summer. Pay Al Gore money. Oh my gosh, it's raining in the monsoon season in Asia. Oh my gosh, pay the UN money. So the climate McCarthyism scandal is growing. Lord Christopher Monckton of Brinsley, who famously parachuted into the UN meetings in South Africa trying to draw attention to their fraud a few years ago, and who broke the ClimateGate, many of the ClimateGate documents, as well as hackers released that, but he released even more that he was able to get. And he was able to leak the Copenhagen Treaty that was the world government treaty and helped destroy that 5 years ago in Copenhagen. So he's going to be joining us via video Skype in the second hour to cover all things fake Enviro power grab and where the state of this major battle against Agenda 21 is. That will be discussed coming up in the second hour of this worldwide Thursday transmission, the 22nd day of May, 2014. That said, it is yet another total, complete overload of information. Obama seeks sports for political refuge. That's the Drudge headline from Bloomberg, and that's exactly what he's doing. Almost any time I see ESPN or Fox Sports, it's Obama on there promoting his agenda. Totally and completely disgusting. To try to get the mindless bandwagon crowd in line for that. Up on Infowars.com, feds set to bail out insurance corporations with taxpayer money. Kurt Nemo, TSA to purchase 24 million rounds of duty ammunition. Paul Watson asked the question, feds preparing to arm TSA workers? And it's in the article. You know, we're so careful to be accurate that the headline should really be TSA now to arm their Gestapo. Because last year and this year, their union said we want to be armed, and they're moving to be armed. And to have a TSA Federal Police Armed Division expanded out of the, quote, Viper teams that are already on the streets of America under the TSA. So the headline should be TSA to expand arming of its agents. Because it's already going on. But there it is, TSA to purchase 24 million rounds of, quote, duty ammunition. That's in the purchase order. It's not even target ammo. I quit counting at like 2.5 billion rounds a few months ago. But we should do a whole article where we get all the different purchase orders and tally it together. Because what the establishment prostitute media does is they go, oh, Alex says it's 1.6 billion or it's 2.5 billion over the last 2 years. We've been reporting on this. Arms buildup and ammo buildup, munition buildup. They'll go, look, only 100 million or only 200 million. See, that's not 2 billion. He's lying. Not adding up all the line items that just stack into the stratosphere like some type of space elevator to hell. So that's coming up. Also, U.S. Special Forces with foreign troops practice invading Tampa to fight, quote, extremists. So foreign troops trained to take on the American people. That's ultra bombshell. Who needs the United States? Not Russia and China. Video, secrets to having a healthy baby. Democratic senator. Wait till you hear it all coming up. Look at this headline out of CBS News. Talk about Orwellian. Talk about Brave New World. Talk about Pharmakia police state. CBS News. CDC reports more than 10,000 toddlers and only a fraction of that's being reported, are medicated for ADHD. They're on sugar, they're on red dyes, they're on all this crazy stuff. They're out of control, no one's disciplining them. The answer is put them on Adderall, put them on Ritalin that absolutely retards growth, causes brain shrinkage, heart expansion, heart attacks, you name it. Almost everybody I know knows people that have heart attacks while playing sports and die at major high schools. 2 people, when I was in middle school and high school, died while playing football on the football field or during two-a-days because they were on Ritalin. And I remember saying, no, they were on Ritalin, and that caused a heart attack, the doctor said. But it's okay because it's the medical establishment. I mean, that's the type of article I have, literally over 100 of them here today that need to be covered. That is the type of out-of-control garbage. The children need exercise. They need non-GMO. They don't need all the aspartame that's in most of the chewing gum and candy now, all the different additives. Chicken McNuggets have a form of plastic in them, ladies and gentlemen, and that's public knowledge and no one gets in trouble. At least a few months ago when we covered and others covered the fact that Subway has a plastic emulsifier in its bread, they said they'd take that out. I mean, these are the issues while the children are bouncing off the walls, the electromagnetic radiation, the 4 or 5 hours of television and video games a day. This is the issue. The public are watchers. They are spectators. They are in a trance state. There's all sorts of medical issues, and the answer is not burning their brains out with speed. Because it's true, you put somebody on speed, it'll mellow them out after a while, after they burn out on it. And the argument is, well, they're so wound up, this has the opposite effect with their brain. It's all a load of horse crap. Excuse my French. Okay, where to start? We've got clips like this one coming up. Democratic senator, many people who oppose Obamacare because they're racist, and that's Senator Jay Rockefeller, who said the internet should never have been invented, and who is the head of the Rockefeller family dynasty now. David Rockefeller still attends Bilderberg, but he's kind of drifted off into the distance. And so that article is up on Infowars.com. And that is the standard response now. You don't want to turn your guns in? You don't think the state rules your kids? You don't want open borders? You don't want to ship your jobs to China? You don't want your power plant shut down? You got any opinion? You know the boiling temperature of water. You know how to tie your shoelaces. It's an act of racist evil by the man whose family founded Coal Springs Harbor and the modern eugenics movement and funded Adolf Hitler as his main financiers. They are going to fight racism, ladies and gentlemen. Just like George Soros, known Nazi collaborator, gets ADL Southern Poverty Law Center awards and is fomenting and funding neo-Nazis right now in Eastern Europe. He is hailed as a beloved, wonderful person. Arnold Schwarzenegger says he wants to be like Hitler, wears Nazi uniforms, told Rolling Stones he admires Adolf Hitler. He gets ADL awards. He reportedly at home dresses up in an SS uniform. His dad was an SS captain, running an entire town and disappearing people in World War II. In Graz, ADL awards. If you wear a Nazi uniform and actually are a Nazi, you get ADL awards. If you are not for Nazis, you get demonized by the Southern Poverty Law Center, ADL, as a Nazi, as I am. MSNBC, White House run. Alex Jones is, quote, deeply racist. And they don't show one clip or one thing. This is the mindlessness of the political correctness. And it works on people. In most states, whites are now a minority. It doesn't matter. If there was one white person being hunted down in a gully and being shot in the back, 200 years from now, if there was no white people, it'd still be a majority and still the problem. If you slip on a banana peel, it's white people's fault. And a lot of the so-called minorities, it's like keeping score or something, using the claim of racism to feel and act however they want when it's just tribalism, and the, quote, minorities are being taught to hate white people in their own form of tribalism. So that's coming up. Russia is taking Prince Charles's Putin and Hitler comment very seriously. He's called him Hitler. So is Jay Leno, of all people, trying to, I guess, keep his job. Hackers are targeting millions of eBay users. We're going to get into that. Google wants to display targeted ads on your refrigerator and everything else in your house, tracking everything you do. That's in Wired magazine. We're going to be breaking all that down. A Daily Mail article, have aliens already visited Earth? NASA book suggests that ancient rock art could have been created by extraterrestrials. That's what the movie Prometheus and all this is about introducing the idea that we were created by aliens, because the DNA and all the science is proving that evolution didn't happen the way they said it did, that there's giant changes that happen overnight, and that humans are not of this world. And that's what NASA's basically saying. And so, again, I don't argue with the theory of evolution or the theory of creation, because all of it is constructs of man looking at histories and ancient text and projecting the current debate onto it. Bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, what some local preacher thinks about how the earth was created isn't even what the Bible says. They're just playing the part of God and their dogma that discredits Christianity, which, if you actually study the Bible, it's amazing and it actually verifies it. But that's another trick of the world. And then if you look at what the evolutionists say, Piltdown Man and pig skulls and pig teeth and all the hoaxes and all the lies, there is massive fraud in modern science, and it's a religion of eugenics to sell the idea that the general public is scum and deserves to die, to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So see, I reject it all. The controlled churches idea of the earth being the center of the universe, we know that's bunk. And that was just the perspective of people in the church at the time, of their interpretation. The Bible said the earth was round in multiple places, but the ancients, after the Dark Ages, were saying that it was flat. I mean, it's the same thing over and over again. So, bottom line, I reject the priest of the church who all debate and argue with each other and have 1,000 different interpretations of the Bible. And I also reject the church of the eugenicists who pose as speaking from the throne of total truth, ex cathedra, that everything they say is true, when they're all debating with each other and all have their own little pet theorems. We're going to be breaking that article down today. We're going to cover it all. Lord Monckton joins us with the huge McCarthyism sweeping the world to try to persecute those that point out the public documents that ClimateGate and the latest ClimateGate that broke last week prove that the whole environmental movement is a power grab and is not actually trying to help the earth. That is all coming up as well. We are also going to continue getting into some of the really important news reports, and I'll cover this first when we come back from break. TSA to purchase 24 million rounds of duty ammunition. And Paul Watson goes on to ask the question, are feds preparing to arm TSA workers? That's like asking, do elephants have trunks? And in the article, Paul begs the question. He links to where they say they want armed TSA in the airports, and they're already on the streets via the Viper teams. So the answer is yes, this is happening. We're going to break that down. Also, U.S. Special Forces, we have a newscast of this, and, quote, foreign troops practice invading Tampa. Local news promises invasion is not the Russians or the New World Order. Troops from 60 different nations participated in that. We have video of that up on Infowars.com. Also, House votes to shut down NSA phone snooping. That's what the headline says. That's not what's really happening. NYPD considering using drones and gunshot detectors to fight crime. That means microphones. You know, when they train to mow down the public en masse, they call it zombie kill training. No, it's mow down the public training. All of this is hiding in plain sight. And it is coming up today, ladies and gentlemen. Also, we have a new record price of gas above $3 a gallon for 1,245 days. That's because of dollar devaluation. I told you this 4 years ago, and we did articles on it. We need to dig those up. It's now being reported Angelina Jolie talks the possibility of running for office, wedding and more on GMA. Who cares? I mean, she is an anti-gun, world government promoting, pro-Africa invasion, warmonger who wants the UN and NATO to invade all these countries, put al-Qaeda in charge. She loved the Syria war, the Libya war. She's a war criminal. And I've said that. Angelina Jolie is a guilty, like Joseph Goebbels of Nazi Germany, of crimes against humanity. Prima facie. I happen to know that she's seen my films with Brad Pitt. I happen to know they were aware of the New World Order 10 years ago, and they chose to join it. Asked by Good Morning America yesterday whether she'd ever consider running for office, the human rights advocate replied, you know, if I thought it'd be effective, I would, but I'm not sure if I would ever be taken seriously in that way and be able to be effective, the Oscar winner added. Jolie previously dismissed the idea in years past, saying she had too many skeletons in her closet, but that seems to have changed. What, all the suicide stuff, the cutting herself, the devil worship, the wearing blood around her neck, saying, you know, she loves darkness and murder, stuff like that. I love how she's a human rights advocate with the UN. Like David Rockefeller is a philanthropist. And Jay Rockefeller is a humanitarian. And David de Rothschild, who we got on the show, is a humanitarian, a philanthropist, and an adventurer. He's like Indiana Jones, why he went to the Arctic once, hundreds of years after people pioneered it in the middle of winter and went to the North Pole. Why did you hear he looked at the moon with a telescope? So he's Neil Armstrong now. He flew by helicopter to the North Pole once. He's a trailblazer. Did you hear David de Rothschild actually found the Lewis and Clark Trail and actually went from the East Coast to the West Coast just last year? Did you hear that? He discovered California, folks. The Rothschild heir from England. Did you know? He's a hero. I asked him when he was on the show. I was able to get him on because he had a children's book of brainwashing out about how polar bears couldn't swim. I said, okay, well, why are the ice caps of Mars previously melting? And I said, now they're expanding because, you know, global warming had reversed. That was 7 years ago, and it was already clearly reversing. I said, why are the ice caps of Mars, you know, getting smaller too? It's because the sun's heating up. And he said, no, it's because Mars is closer to the sun than the Earth. And I said, no, it isn't. It's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and then on out. And he said, no, it's not, and laughed, thinking my audience was the general public, that if an authority, a Rothschild, says, you know, he's literally the guy's a Jesus lookalike. He literally tries to look like Jesus, acts like Jesus, says he wants to save the earth. He is our Christ. Our Christ, Al Gore is a Christ as well, saving us, inventing the internet. He said, no, it is closer to the sun than the earth. Doesn't matter if it's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, Jupiter, the largest planet, the supergiant, the gas giant, Saturn, the next gas giant, Uranus, the next gas giant, Neptune, and then Pluto, which isn't even considered a planet anymore, and over 300 bodies the size of Pluto or bigger in the Kuiper Belt. It doesn't matter that a 7-year-old should know that. He thinks you're a moron, and he says to you, I say Mars is closest to the sun, and Mercury is in the Kuiper Belt. And because he says it, it is law. And if Al Gore says he invented the internet, it's true. And if Obama says it's racist to not turn your guns in, and that the NRA was founded by the Klan, even if it's the opposite, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you built your small business. He says you didn't build it. it doesn't matter if increasing the debt increases the debt. He says increasing the debt limit doesn't increase it. It doesn't matter if there's $5,000 fines for business owners this year that don't get or make their employees get insurance. They'll just say it doesn't exist as the taxes come due. They will hit you and hit you hard and never stop because you love it and you beg for it and you want it. Because people love being unconscious jellyfish that aren't awake because you watch television all day, you play video games all day, people smoke dope all day, they get drunk all day, and they have no idea what planet they're even on.
We are going to become gods. Period. If you don't like it, get off. You don't have to contribute. You don't have to participate. But if you're going to interfere with me becoming God, you're going to have big trouble. Then we'll have warfare.
That's Richard Seed, one of the globalists. You know, it really hit me last night. I say this every day, but I was driving home at night, taking my children to see a movie. And it really hit me. Man, I'm on a planet in deep space with technocrats manipulating everything, openly saying they are, who believe they're going to be gods and merge with machines, and the general public's running around worried about what Hannah Montana or Miley Cyrus is doing, sticking her yellow tongue out. It looks like it's been up I mean, I don't even know what to say. It's like a dead animal. If you just joined us and are watching on television, you see the articles that are up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. TSA to purchase 24 million rounds of duty ammunition for you and your family. U.S. Special Forces with foreign troops practice invading Tampa to, quote, fight extremists, and announcing on loudspeakers via the news that this is not an invasion by the New World Order. Isn't that just dandy? And New York City's announcing drones and microphones to watch you and listen to you. That's in New York Daily News. Remember just 2-3 years ago, Alex Jones was insane? There was no plan to have drones watching you in the skies. It's crazy. Even though it was in all the Pentagon documents, that they would have armored vehicles deployed everywhere, drones, attack drones. And now they're at South by Southwest this year on the news. We played it here. They have drones with shotguns and tear gas and face scanners to go and chase people down the street and attack them with your digital photo from the DMV loaded lovingly into the robot, flying around scanning, looking for you. Hunter-seeker robots. Oh, and driverless cars are coming to Europe next year, and they're going to tax everyone by the mile, and they're already saying, oh, all the cars for about a decade have a tracker box in them with a live wire, with a cell phone package. We're going to tax you by the mile, and it turns out driverless cars are safer than humans. We're not going to let humans drive soon. Ah! Oh, and Google's going to tie in, along with the NSA and Microsoft and Apple, to all the new appliances, like the CIA director said 2 years ago. And they're going to track everything you do and watch you in live time. And old people, if they get Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security, will now have to have smart grids in their homes, their subsidized housing, that watch when they go to the toilet and report everything they're doing. And sensors in the toilet give, you know, readings if they're sick or anything for their safety, of course. Oh, it's also liberal. Uh-huh. So you want to be slaves, you've got it. And Adon Salazar is working on an article. I saw this last week. I was at the gym, about the only time I see mainstream television. And they had MSNBC on, and they, of course, you know, that's where I would see it. And they have morning after pill ad with a woman getting them off a store shelf. Now, I guess in reality, they're behind the counter, but in the ad I saw, we're going to see if you can find that on YouTube, guys. They're getting it off the shelf. So the idea is this is no big deal. This is safe. It's like a thing of butter, or a can of soda water, or a slice of beef, a rutabaga, an onion. You just throw it in your basket. But you can get it right off Amazon. Plan B, one-step emergency contraceptive. must be 17 or over to purchase without a prescription. Oh, but if you get a prescription, I guess, or you show your ID and you're 17, you can get it. And what they don't tell you is this is basically the morning after pill that killed so many people. I mean, it's really poisonous. It's poison. And they just act like, oh, it's wonderful, safe and effective. Yeah, they found the ad. That's not the one I saw. But, oh, listen to the music. Yeah, let's start it over. Let's start it over since you found it. So this is Plan B, one step. And it says, again, we're going to back it up because I can start at the beginning. I'm going to play it from the beginning so I can read what it says. It's a cartoon of all these happy people. You know, she's laying in bed. She looks over, and the condoms split. Sperm swim by. She's on a bus. A baby's crying. Ooh, babies are gross. I'm not ready for that one, she says. She goes to the chemist. It's a nice trendy word for the drugstore. And she gets the over-the-counter drug. I guess there's a bunch of brand names of it. This is a different one.
1101 step, 72.
And they call it the one step.
More effective the sooner you take it.
And that's out of England. I guess over here it's called Plan B. So again, we'll try to find the Plan B ad and see if we have that. It's probably on the drug website is where we'll find it if it's not on YouTube yet. But the point is, the guys are working on a report on that, just the total culture of death. And in so many sitcoms, dramas, ads, you name it, they show a baby crying, and it's like the most horrible thing on earth. They're gross. They're terrible. They're disempowering. It'll ruin your life. And sometimes I'll be at a resort or something with my children on vacation, and it'll be an empty pool. And it's always when it's an empty pool, and there'll be some trendies out there sitting in the hot tub or whatever. And I'll come out with my children who jump in and swim around and laugh and giggle. And I've actually seen trendies go, ugh, and get up and leave like it was so upsetting to see children. Well, if that's the way you think, go to a hotel that doesn't allow children. They have those. But the truth is, these people will be 45, these 30-year-old trendies, wishing they had children. And then they'll have kids too late, and they'll be autistic, unfortunately, because all the toxins have built up in the body. And I'm not knocking folks that don't want kids, but don't demonize me because I like children. And the minute you have children, your brain switches on. You go to the next level. But folks do that as well with dogs and, you know, pets they have. I mean, the point is we're very nurturative. But when you have children, you start thinking about the world in an entirely different way. And this is about a human commitment, having children, and believing in humanity and believing in life. And even though the world's a terrible place in many ways, it's also a beautiful, wondrous place. And we're doubling down against the tyranny and saying we're going to have children. We're going to survive and thrive. We're going to raise them up right to be aware of how the world really works. That's the idea. But you see these ads about she's laying in bed, there's this gross-looking guy sleeping, she's had sex with him, she looks disgusted at the man, she's on a bus, she's poor, there's babies crying, she doesn't want any part of this, she takes this pill, everything's wonderful. Everything is awesome. Everything is super when you're part of the team, as the Lego movie theme says, which reminds me of all the globalist propaganda. The truth is you're poor because of deindustrialization. You're poor because they broke up the family and made all the women work. You're poor because they have set up an anti-human system where we're culturally bankrupted. And now you don't have a family. Now everyone is totally atomized and separate from each other, and people aren't honorable. They don't care about each other, on average, that buy into the fake liberal, trendy political correctness. They're totally empty. They're totally rudderless, and they don't know why they're so unhappy because they buy into whatever the system says. So if they just double and triple down on the system, they may be fulfilled. I'm gonna steal a silver stallion without a mark on his silky hide, and teach him he can trust me like a brother. And one day we'll saddle up and ride, and we're gonna ride, ride like the one-eyed jack of diamonds with the devil close behind. We're gonna ride. I want to get that Highwayman song and play it from the start as bumper music. Because when you get down to it at the end of the day, whether it's your dog or your horse or your husband or your wife or your children, in mammal relationships, it's all about trust. And you can see a dog when it looks at you with trust, or a horse that knows you and looks at you with trust, or a bird you feed on your back porch that looks at you with trust. And that's all there is in this world, is trust and being honorable. And people taking themselves seriously and taking each other seriously and having some basic respect. And Lord knows I'm not perfect and I'm not respectful all the time, but I realize that's what it's all about. And the globalists don't respect us, and they don't respect themselves. And they have such disdain for the public that at Bilderberg, on record, you're not allowed to look at them in the eyes if you're a bartender or a waiter or a event planner or a manager or anybody.
Hey, Alex.
Yes.
I once served the Queen Mum of England.
What was that like, scum?
Exactly as you describe it. I wasn't allowed to look her in the eye. I was paid a nice $300 not to do that or speak to her.
Tell me that story, because you mentioned it before, but I never got the full story.
Yeah,
I know you also have a degree as a chef and have worked some of the nicest restaurants in Austin before you went to work again back into media. What was it, for KI or KVUE?
KXAN and KI.
That's right.
Yeah, but I was working at Keeneland in Kentucky at the racetrack, and they.
Oh yeah, she lives about a month out of the year there. She just buys her horses there.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. She grabbed a select group of us, and we went up there, and we were told not to look at her. If she did speak to us, not to speak back, and that went for her whole posse as well. And we followed the rules, but that's the way they do it.
Did she need a groom of the stool?
We can talk about that later.
I would invite the Queen of England to come to my house and wipe my ass. She'd be lucky to do that.
She would, Alex.
All right, folks, I don't mean to use crude language, but it's done on purpose, and every once in a while has some aplomb to it. Now, the Queen Mum, that was before she killed over, or the actual Queenie?
The Queen Mum, before she killed over, yeah.
You know, it came out that she daily got the blood of small children that was, quote, donated, as if the children had parental consent. I mean, the children don't have free will. Their parents literally vampired them out to her to have child blood almost on a daily basis pumped into her fetid arteries and veins. What do you think of that?
It was all Canadian. It was good, clean Canadian children's blood.
Oh, you do know about that story?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
John Bound, you know, John Bound comes from a journalist family. His dad worked for AP, and a bunch of other folks got a Peabody Award for journalism, and John has done syndicated radio and news, and then went into being a chef for a while, and back into media, and he's here, and he does a great job. John, how dare you not want to worship your queen, your king, your Lord, your Savior?
I worship the king of rock and roll, Jimi Hendrix.
Well, that's a little better. Something tells me that the known Nazi Prince Philip, who when he sees black people literally starts saying, shouldn't you be out with a spear and a bone through your nose? Literally, you can look that up. I don't think he likes Jimi Hendrix.
Well, he called Putin a Nazi, right?
Well, that's his son did that. Yeah. Well, exactly. No.
Right.
If you're George Soros and a real Nazi, you call people Nazis. If you're real Nazis like the German royal family of England, you call other people Nazis that actually are the children of the people that defeated the Nazis. See?
Yeah, I'm starting to get it figured out. I think eventually we'll all just walk backwards.
Yeah, one of my grandfathers was a fighter pilot. The other flew B-17s. And so because they fought the Nazis, then I am a Nazi, according to MSNBC. You understand how that works?
Yeah.
So the Russians fought the Nazis. They're now the Nazis, according to the Nazis.
Right.
Are you?
Yeah. My great-grandpa fought in World War I. My grandpa fought in World War II. He fought the Nazis. So what you're saying is I'm a Nazi.
You're a Nazi.
Got it.
You understand how that works now?
I got it.
Okay, good.
I'll go celebrate Memorial Day.
Good. Good. While they literally shovel the veterans into an incinerator.
All hail Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Again, who told Rolling Stone he admires Hitler, wants to be a dictator, and reportedly dresses up in SS uniforms and hands out records with Hitler speeches on them. Rolling Stone, again, has the interview with him saying that. But that's okay. You understand? Is that cool with you, John?
I'm going to work on it.
Well, he's anti-gun, pro-open border, so Republicans love him, too. You understand?
Yeah, he just works the angle, right?
Well, he just totally doesn't care about anybody but himself and absolutely turns his back on his friends of 20, 30 years. So I know folks that know Schwarzenegger well, people that have smoked pot with him, used drugs with him for 20, 30 years, you know, whole 9 yards. And, you know, the minute they have trouble... hold on a second, my dad's calling me. Hey, Dad, I'm on the air. How's it going? If you want to come over and talk to me. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I'll call you back during the break in about 2 minutes, okay?
What a good son, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Dad. I just don't know why he calls me when I'm on the air. Anyways, I need to stop right there, ladies and gentlemen. Before I go any further, I'm going to come back and cover the arms buildup against the American people and where all that is going. But just briefly here, we are literally worshiping royal families that are taxpayer-funded all over the world who are total eugenicists, and then also worshiping Angelina Jolie, and they're merging Hollywood with the political class and all the red carpets and the crud. It is a sick joke. We should reject all of these people. And when you see somebody reading People magazine and caring about all the mindless hype, explain to them that it's literally mind control to blind them from the fact that they are on a deep space orbiting planetoid in the middle of total wonderment, total creation, and just amazing times. And that we are exposing the evil because there's so much good that needs to be absolutely protected, kissed, sugar on top. Double sugar on top. That's what we're saying. Now, before I go any further, mid-air refueling. We are funded by you, the legions of liberty lovers worldwide, and we sell the highest quality Made in America pro-gun shirts and other apparel and ball caps and bronze belt buckles with George Washington snarling on the front. And just everything else at InfoWarsStore.com. That's InfoWarsStore.com. We have InfoWarsLife.com with the Survival Shield Nascent Iodine, proprietary, nothing else like it. And a special deal right now with the InfoWars Challenge, where you can get them both discounted with Super Male Vitality. We've got the Lung Shield, InfoWarsLife.com. Try it. You'll be blown away. I cannot tell you enough what Super Male has done for me. It also works on women. We have a female version coming out next week. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsLife.com, or 888-253-3139. We don't have children's blood like the Queen of England, but we do have powerful herbs. We'll be right back. Stay with us. That's all there is in this world, is to find that silver stallion without a mark upon his silky hide and teach him he can trust you like a brother. One day you're going to saddle up and ride. And that's about your own self, becoming an honorable, good man, building yourself into someone who is streetwise and good and actually understands how people work and wants to build others up and build yourself up. And then one day you'll become a man and you can saddle up and ride with the woman, the stallion, and the wind. And the sun is going to burn into a cinder before we pass this way again. But we're going to ride. We're going to ride. Like the one-eyed jack of diamonds with the devil close behind, we're going to ride. The devil wants to hold you back. The devil wants to control your life. The devil wants to take your free will. Even if the devil didn't exist, the archetype of the devil does. The devil doesn't want you to have guns and know how to use them. The devil wants to be the one with the guns. Because political power goes out of the barrel of a gun, and the control freaks desire power above all else. TSA to purchase 24 million rounds of duty ammunition. Feds preparing to arm TSA workers, Paul Watson asked. Do fish swim in the sea? And then the article goes on to say they're calling for arming They're already armed on the street with Viper teams. Now they want to be armed, and their union calls to be armed. And can you think of how horrible that's going to be? The police are already allowed to execute people anywhere they want in the country now. Some lawyer or some law student says, hey, why are you trying to search for a car without a warrant? So the cops grab him, spread his legs, and ram their knees into his crotch till his testicles have to be removed. And the police hail it in Albuquerque. So it's just part of the total preparation for war with the people. And again, that dovetails with U.S. Special Forces foreign troops practice invading Tampa. We got Lord Monckton coming up. I'm going to play these videos, get into all of it. I haven't got into Jay Rockefeller yet. I mentioned it, but we'll play that audio because it dovetails with the McCarthyism beyond McCarthy, because McCarthy was going after something real, though I didn't agree with his tactics. He's been proven right since the Soviet files were declassified. This new ultra-Soviet style true McCarthyism, saying you're racist if you don't like Obamacare. You're a hate monger and need to be arrested if you don't believe in global warming. And then it's man-made and paying Lord Rothschild money. We'll be right back with the second hour on this worldwide Thursday edition. Lord Monckton will be joining us coming up in the next segment. I haven't had him on in probably 4 or 5 months. Huge news on a new ClimateGate document they've been suppressing. Total fraud. They're planning to persecute anyone that denies what they're up to. And again, that dovetails. I'll play this again for him, but I want to play a clip here of Senator Jay Rockefeller. Maybe we should get the clip of him saying the internet should never have been invented by Al Gore, of course, and other such fallacies. But he now says it's racist if you don't like Obamacare. That a lot of people that don't like it are racist. And even though most polls show it over 80% negative now, as people learn how bad it is, they have Bill Press on MSNBC, all of them going, it's the law, it's good, and the racism will be battled. And the conspiracy theorist about rationing of care and death panels at the VA, that's going to be stopped as well. Racist conspiracy theorist. And then Press just acts real confident, and the average Democratic cult member just goes, oh, we're the smart ones. We're not the right-wingers. You people are about as liberal as Hitler. You people are the opposite of liberals. Thomas Jefferson, as I say, is a liberal. You, my friend, are not a liberal. I want to be clear about that. And I'm just sick of these people parading around with their low IQs, with their cultural Marxism, flaunting it in our face that they're tough and strong and superior because they've adopted the establishment poison vomit, and then they eat the vomit and then spray the vomit on us. We're supposed to lap it up and relish it like it's mother's ambrosia. No, you people are gibbering scum on confidence trips because you're so empty. You're narcissistic turds. I don't want to be around you. I don't want to look at you. And I sure don't want you running my life. Get out of my way, filth. All of you that say our kids belong to you. That's like they're, you know, birds will have a certain sound like a whippoorwill will go, whippoorwill or Bob White, call a bird a Bob White. Birds usually named after their call. A lot of them are. Yours is, kids belong to us. Kids belong to us. You're our slave. You're our slave. You're dumb. We're smart. Let's go ahead and go to Jay Rockefeller, the ultra-fascist, totally wicked eugenicist, New World Order scumbag who thinks the public is total trash, who sucks off taxpayer money and is tax-exempt, openly saying that a lot of people don't like it because Obama's black. This is written by foreign banks that he partially owns to literally have a tax to them and lower the quality of care and put payroll taxes on poor people and taxes on medical devices and just butcher health care even more. It's a fascist gang raping. And his answer is, no, you're racist. Here is Jay Rockefeller, enemy of freedom.
I'll be able to dig up some emails that make part of the Affordable Care Act that doesn't look good, especially from people who've made up their mind that they don't want it to work because they don't like the president. Maybe he's of the wrong color, something of that sort. I've seen a lot of that, and I know a lot of that to be true. It's not something you're meant to talk about in public, but it's something I'm talking about in public because that is very true. People associate a piece of legislation. Their leader in the Senate has committed at the beginning of the president's term to block every piece of legislation that the president puts forward. And they have done that with this exception and a few other exceptions. And I find that disingenuous behavior.
By the way, I was just brought a holy mackerel level article that was mailed to us by a listener from June 20th, 1969, Life magazine. This has national import news, ladies and gentlemen, inside of it. This is news that will affect, to some extent, if we get it out, the 2016 election. Guess who's inside of it? Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. Back weeknights, 7 o'clock Central, the nightly news at InfoWarsNews.com. I am your host, Alex Jones. Thank you so much for joining us. We have our team working on major bombshell developments on the VA scandal and how under socialist health care, and we took scores of calls yesterday, it's gone from being bad at the VA to literally hellish, where the civilian contractors are basically a bunch of socialists and hate the military veterans and are putting them on death panel list like they have under government-run health care in many areas of Europe. Now, coming up after Lord Monckton leaves us, we were sent by listeners Life magazine, June 20th, 1969, and my cousin Buckley Hammond and also Kit Daniels, both the writers, have read it. I just started going over it. They gave it to me about 10 minutes ago. It's simply amazing. They are showing the new left in here and who the leaders of America are going to be, Hillary Clinton and others, and how they're going to promote socialism and create a new identity for the youth of America at Harvard and Brandeis with red flags, with red fist, really promoting communism. And it shows Hillary Clinton admitting they're basically brainwashing the youth for the new America. This is simply amazing. And then she got a job under the CIA section chief based in England with Bill Clinton. Totally arranged marriage, totally staged by the globalist control group inside the CIA. And we've broken all that down with people that worked with her in the CIA. But it is simply unbelievable with a bunch of ruling class socialists. Look, Moynihan, all of them are right here. Spiro Agnew. An answer from their elders. Be aware of self-righteousness. And again, branding them as the saviors of everything. And now they've totally wrecked the country. What a disgusting article. We'll do a full review of this tyranny placement from 1969 on the nightly news tonight. Now, joining us is Lord Christopher Monckton of scienceandpublicpolicy.org, the most documented scientific clearinghouse out there for what's been proven to be absolutely accurate, very conservative, but very accurate. This is much worse than he's even saying, but what he puts is so well documented as conservative about the Earth's been cooling for the last 6-7 years. The warming stopped 17, 18 years ago. They're fixing the documents and the research around it, the buoys, the Weather Service info through the universities to cover that up. He helped get the document at Copenhagen 5 years ago that blew it wide open, that it was a world tax that helped stop it. He released that. He spearheaded. And I'm not building him up. It's just you need to know you can be effective as well. The best news site overall is Climate Depot with Mark Moreno. And, of course, DrudgeReport.com and Infowars.com are always carrying their news on a weekly basis. But I wanted to get Lord Monckton on last week. I said, please get him on as soon as you can, when there was just a flotilla of new ClimateGate cover-up information and new statements about let's arrest anybody that doesn't agree that climate change is real and doesn't want to pay carbon taxes. And let's fire professors, or let's remove them. I mean, it's the U.S. and England. It's the new McCarthyism. So I want to cover all the latest authoritarianism by the kleptocratic, self-anointed priesthood of the French Revolution-style Jacobins. I mean, I liken them to them because that's where the modern Illuminati, if you study history, and then the communist movement came out of France and England. This is on record mainline textbooks. Just people hear the term Illuminati, don't even know George Washington wrote letters saying how dangerous it was trying to take over Masonry. You can read his letters, the National Archive, online. And so what we face is a group of just control freak criminals that wanted to overthrow the existing order that certainly had some problems, and that got well-meaning liberals in the Thomas Jefferson vein in France and in the U.S. and England to go along with them. So I'm going back to the original progenitors of this degeneracy. They are not liberals. They coaxed many real liberals and true progressives who wanted to progress scientifically, the Enlightenment and the Renaissance. They wanted to hijack that and create a 9-day work week, a living hell, no more families. Everything you see them build, the nightmare North Koreas, the nightmare Soviet Unions, is a Jacobin hallucination. Now, I know Lord Monckton's a historian and inventor, Margaret Thatcher's top advisor and a member of her cabinet. I know he studied history, so I know he will probably agree with what I just said and then augment it. But these are the little-known facts. And the reason I'm starting this interview right now with the source of this communist disease is so that people understand communism is only a 150-year-old Karl Marx, Engels manifestation of the Jacobins. We'll see if he agrees with me. I would imagine he does because it's history. And then I want to look at their latest criminal activities and their attempt to shut us down. And then the state of the war against human resources and the war on humanity. We're winning the info war, but the enemy has seized all the major institutions. So how do we fight them effectively? Lord Monckton, thank you so much for joining us. Where do you think this evil generates from historically, politically? And do you agree with my analysis going back to the root of it in the last 210 years?
I'm going to go back further than that to early imperial China, Alex, because that was the place where they first began philosophically meditating upon the fundamental divide in politics, which is between, on the one hand, the totalitarians, as we would call them now. They called them in those days the legalists. And on the other, the libertarians, that's what we would call them now, and they called them the Confucians. And so the debate between the legalists and the Confucians has gone on really throughout the history of global government, going all the way back to imperial China, where we're going back thousands of years. And that is and will always be the fundamental divide between those who wish to control everything from the center and those who, like you and me, Alex, reckon that we can trust the people to decide for themselves how their government should be shaped and how it should run. And that's why we support the US Constitution. And we don't support the attempt to undermine it and circumvent it by your current president and his cabinet. And on the question of the climate, which is just the latest manifestation of the totalitarian or legalist faction, they have decided to do something which, as far as I can tell, looking back through history, is unique. They've decided, and I think it's a strategic mistake on the part of the totalitarian left, they've decided to try to politicize science itself. They've decided to adopt a particular scientific viewpoint as party policy, as the party line. Now, this is very strange. Of course, there have been precedents for scientific madnesses being adopted by individual nations, such as Lysenkoism under Stalin, where Lysenko, who was a country agronomist, was elevated to be ludicrously head of the Soviet Academy of Sciences and managed to kill 20 million Soviet citizens over a 20-year period with a succession of failed harvests because of his mad theory that soaking the seeds of the corn in water over the winter rather than planting them to get used to the temperature would give you a better crop, or it gave you failed crop after failed crop. And that was adopted for a time by the Soviets, and of course eventually they realized it was mad and they stopped doing it. Likewise, there was Hitler. You go back to Hitler's Germany, where the first use of centralized, full-scale lying propaganda, soon to be copied by the Soviets and now by the totalitarian left worldwide, was to be introduced. And there, the scientific dopiness that they took on board was eugenicism. Now, both of these have now been proven to be nonsensical. But what's now happened is you've got a global totalitarian governing class, realizing for the first time that via international institutions such as the UN and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the World Bank and the all these different centralized organizations, not one of which is elected, they can draw all this together and centralize their power. But they needed a scare story in order to frighten us.
And let's go back, though, just because I threw out the French Revolution, that was really the opposite of what the American Revolution was, in my view. Just because I'm interested in it, what's your take on my statements about the fact that you trace communism back to the French Revolution and this attempt?
Well, it goes back much further than that. It is a very, very old and very, very tired.
No, I know it even goes back to Plato. Yeah, I mean, Plato even talked about some of these ideas and debated them back and forth. I understand that, but specifically, what is your take on the French Revolution?
I mean, of course, that, too, is a very fine demonstration of this notion of putting the collective before the individual. And, of course, they didn't believe for a moment in liberty or equality or fraternity. They believed in replacing one governing class, which was relatively competent, with another that wasn't, and which soon collapsed in favor of a sort of brief and flashy attempt at empire, whereupon the whole of Europe ganged up against this nonsense and brought Napoleon down. So it was a pretty dramatic failure, the French Revolution, but they're still terribly proud of it. They ought to be ashamed of it.
And that's why I brought it up, because it failed, and every major tyranny ends up failing. The question is, with all the new high-tech ingredients and more fancy propaganda at the technocrats' hands, what does your gut historically tell you, Lord Monckton, who I know is a scholar and also a journalist? What is your gut? How does your gut tell you this is going to end? How do you see it playing out?
The new dimension here is the fact that this has gone global. The globalization of totalitarian groupthink is an immensely serious problem, because those who love freedom are by instinct independent-minded. You know this from the people you interview. We all think in our own way, we talk in our own way, we don't follow the party line of any party, really. And this gives the left, the legalists, the totalitarians, a permanent political advantage, and an advantage which actively becomes dangerous when government starts to become global. So if we go back only as far as the Jacobins and the French Revolution, and you come forward from there, you see the gradual global dissemination of the idea that we should salute and obey our masters in the governing class. A thing which the aristocrats in Britain never expected or demanded is now expected and demanded by the totalitarian left, and with increasing arrogance. For instance, Professor Lennart Bengtsson, one of the most eminent scientists in the world, a physicist, and he was the head of the Max Planck Institute in Germany, which is Europe's foremost scientific institution. And not so long ago, having safely retired, because he couldn't have dared to do this before he retired in the new and intolerant and unacademically free scientific world, he decided to join the policy of my good friend Nigel Lawson's Global Warming Policy Foundation, which is a think tank in the United Kingdom, the only one devoted to giving people the other side of the story, first on the economics and now also increasingly on the science. And of course it was an enormous coup for the Global Warming Policy Foundation to have persuaded somebody as eminent as Professor Bengtsson to join the academic advisory board of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. So he joined it, but within 10 days he had resigned again. And in his letter of resignation, he said he had been so unmercifully bullied and pilloried and pestered with emails and telephone calls and hate mail chiefly from the United States, from scientists in the United States, that he no longer dared to continue, for the sake of his safety and that of his family, to remain as a member of the board of the institution.
The global warmists are a cult.
They're not just a cult. They are a vicious tyranny, and they're trying to impose a narrow and, as we now know, scientifically nonsensical viewpoint on the world. There has now been, according to one of the satellite data sets, no global warming at all for 17 years and 9 months, a completely flat trend. Absolutely no movement at all, 17 years, 9 months. Now, here's the thing, Alex. In how many newspapers have you seen that fact or anything like it recently reported?
Really nowhere. In fact, every summer they point satellites at the northern and southern hemispheres respectively and say they're melting forever, knowing full well they always shrink in the summer. I mean,
That's right, and you see pictures of water pouring off the glaciers, and they say this is because of global warming. No, it's because it's summertime. Get used to it. It's been happening for billions of years. But that is how absurd it's now become. And the news media, the beef I have with them is not so much that most of them are now in this totalitarian class and in this mindset, but that they will not ever print or reveal any fact, however obviously central to the debate and important to it, if in any way that fact casts doubt upon the party line.
Well, sure, there's a new climate gate, for those that don't know, that just broke in the last few weeks. Tell folks about that. We have new examples of them saying we've got to hide the decline. We've got to, not let this data come out. We can't have this paper published.
Oh, they're doing this all the time. I mean, it's a continuous process. It began years ago when the ClimateGate emails came out. It's worth just recalling what happened then, because somebody at the University of East Anglia who had access to its servers started reading the emails between the various scientists around the world that are whipping up this scare. Professor Phil Jones was right at the center of this small group. It's a very small group of scientists who are running this scare. He is one of them, Michael Mann at the University of Virginia, then at Penn State, various others, Kevin Trenberth in Colorado, Ben Santer at Lawrence Livermore. There's only half a dozen of them, really. These were the people, all of them essentially communist in their political outlook, all of them determined to centralize political and scientific power in their own hands as far as possible.
And as you said, Lord Monckton, they relish their collective power, even though individually they can hardly tie their shoelaces, and I'm serious.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you look at the science they produce, it's shoddy in the extreme, full of holes, and of course none of it has come to pass. And when I, for instance, wrote in 2008 in a scientific paper, published in a scientific journal after peer review, that I reckoned the most likely thing was that a doubling of CO2 concentration might cause around 1 Celsius of global warming, and that if you doubled it again, you'd get another 1 Celsius, and after that, you'd run out of things to make CO2 with, and therefore there wasn't a climate problem. There was fury. Again, this business of them saying we can't have this problem.
Well, they've called for your arrest.
They've done that many times. They've said I should be executed. They haven't just said I should be arrested. They've said I should be executed. Now, this is exactly the kind of language that was used by the French revolutionaries, going back again to the Jacobins. It was used also in the days before Hitler came to power, by the Nazi Party. They were calling for the extermination of their opponents. And this is exactly the kind of language which is yet again being used by the totalitarian left.
Oh, now if you support the Tea Party or anything at colleges, the professors say, we're going to kill you, and they're allowed. That was in the news 2 weeks ago. They literally are threatening people. And I noticed the controlled left is ramping themselves up into a bloodlusting lather now and openly saying no one is allowed to challenge them.
This is exactly what happened in pre-Nazi Germany. But as the Nazis were coming to power, they began to command and organize the organs of public opinion. They dominated them just as the left does now. It was the left then. Remember that although there have been attempts to rebrand Hitler as right-wing, he wasn't. It was the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. These were leftists. They didn't like the communists because they were rival leftists, not because one was right and one was left. They were both leftists. And the Hitlerian movement did exactly this. It began by making increasingly strident demands that its opponents should be rounded up and first imprisoned, then executed, whether with or without trial. They didn't care either way. And people didn't bother to stop them saying this. And that was where the trouble grew. The moment they began to realize that however extreme their rhetoric, however wild their demands that their opponents should be obliterated, They would not be punished. They would not be held to account. Nobody would bat an eyelid.
That's right. That's right. It's not free speech when you say we need to kill our enemies.
Once they realized they could get away with that, they then began implementing what they had been calling for. And the result was 6 million Jews murdered and 100 million people killed in the Second World War. It is extremely dangerous to allow this kind of talk and not to fight back and not to resist it. And the problem I have with today's GOP, with the honourable exception of the Tea Party, is that they are sitting on their large wobbly bottoms and not standing up. And every time this attempt to shut free speech down happens, they are not fighting back. They are not bringing in the Constitution and pointing it at those who are doing this. They are tamely allowing the freedom that built America to be dismantled, not just piece by piece, but now wholesale. The moment you get open calls round the world from the scientific community that anybody who disagrees with them on this subject should be executed, and this is increasingly happening, then, and they are allowed to do this without punishment, then that's when the rot starts. Now, fortunately, in some countries, because of what happened under Hitler, it is now unlawful to call for the execution of those whom you oppose politically. And in Austria, for instance, it is illegal. And in Scotland, where I'm speaking from, it is illegal. And in Austria recently, about this time last year, there was a professor, I won't name him because he eventually backed off. And he published a thing all over the web saying that people who didn't believe that the climate was doomed unless the West was shut down should be executed. He said, no point in trying them, they've just got to be executed. Let's get them out of the way. And of course, there was an outcry, but he went on saying it and trying to justify it until I wrote to him and gave him 24 hours to retract that demand that we should be executed, or I would report him to the Austrian authorities under the hate speech law, and he will be sent to prison for life. And my goodness, you've never had a retraction as quick as the one that came back from him.
Well, that's the thing about the controlled left, is they're such ultra-authoritarian plutocrats, and they just have to be stood up against. We'll be right back with Lord Monckton. It's been banned all over the country. Colleges are saying it's racist if you have a fiesta party at your fraternity with Mexican food. Toga parties are next. They're saying no one can dress up in Halloween costumes of geisha girls, cowboys, or Indians. This is the total control of reducing the language and making everything a faux pas, and it ties into this shutting down information and these people calling themselves liberals when they are the opposite. They're authoritarians. We'll talk to Lord Monckton more about that and talk about the latest scandals and where this fight is going, because we told you this 6 years ago, and now it's happened. They've shut down over 500 different power plants in the country. Coal power plants, they're totally clean. Only water vapor and carbon dioxide comes out. And in many areas, power prices have doubled. On average, they're up over 30%. And it's bankrupting the country. China gets 3 a week. We get more than 3 a week shut down. Now they want to shut down more than 1,000 more. Do the math. It's incredible. It's bring us to our knees. We're going to break down Agenda 21 with Lord Monckton in a moment. Speaking of Agenda 21, we sell Rosa Corey's book. By the way, she's a liberal and Democrat out in California that woke up to this and was a city, county planner, zoning person, and thought, this is incredible. She wrote her book. It's a short book. It's available at InfoWarsStore.com. And it's great to give to friends and family that aren't awake, to county commissioners, city council people. It's just one of hundreds of books we carry at InfoWarsStore.com. The books, the films, the liberty-promoting pro-gun and more apparel, Made in America. Made-in-1776.com takes you right to the subsection of InfoWarsStore.com, where you can find all the Made in America paraphernalia, golf shirts, you name it. And your purchase of these fine products supports our endeavor. They are war bonds in the info war against the globalists, and we're having a major effect. So many times it's InfoWars and a constellation of other liberty media worldwide that is holding the line and pushing back. UKIP's being demonized and saying, they're racist. We ought to shut them down in England because it's the fastest growing party in England and now in Europe. Kind of Ron Paul-esque, just libertarian. This is happening. And, of course, Lord Monckton is one of the founders of UKIP. So it's so important to support real independent media, even if you don't totally agree with it, if it's basically pro-liberty. Because what Lord Monckton said is so key, and I want him to elaborate on this because it's so important, and I don't want it to get lost in translation or kind of fall into the cracks. He said collectivists have a leg up, not individually. Individually, they're failures. And they've got university studies out of Canada that they're 6 times more likely to steal. Their families don't last. These are terrible people. They're weak people. So they seek power in a gang. They seek power in a cult. They seek power in a combine. They seek power in a swarm like locust. And individualist, we all have different views on the world, even if we may agree on like 90%. We have different perspectives. We're our own people. And so we're not joiners. And we don't tend to, we tend to give charity-wise more than anybody else, conservatives, libertarians, those statistics are worldwide. But we don't unify that often because we are individualists, as you just said. So it's so important to buy the products, to promote the radio shows, the news websites that the FCC came out last week, the FCC chairman, and said, no, this will censor the Drudge Report and other libertarian conservative sites. The Republican leadership wants the real Tea Party shut down with the Democrats. They're the corrupt ruling class that's not free market. And they're branding, if you're pro-gun or anti-Obamacare, that's a total scam, that you're racist. Senator Rockefeller, I played the clip earlier in the hour. We'll play it again. This is what's happening. And these are real authoritarians. They need to be called out for it. They're very dangerous. So again, go to InfoWarsStore.com. We don't get taxpayer money like MSNBC or NPR. We are supported by viewers like you who support our sponsors, like MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex. Best storable foods out there, last 20 years, non-GMO, great customer service. MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex, 866-229-0927. Support our sponsors. Support our local AM and FM affiliates. Go to InfoWarsLife.com. We've developed the nascent iodine that's so good for the glands and helps protect the thyroid from types of radioactive isotopes. People are so, on average, deficient in this. It's done wonders for me and my health. We've got the Super Male Vitality, 8 concentrated herbs that give me such vitality, libido, you name it. You've heard the rave reviews from listeners. Try it. All you've done is support the show, and then you'll be blown away by how powerful it is, or you'll be the first bad review we've gotten. Lung cleanse, all of it. InfoWarsLife.com. Check it out today or call toll-free 888-253-3139. But Lord Monckton, I want you to recap and expand on what you just said, because it was Benjamin Franklin that said we all hang together or hang separate. That's why I don't infight with libertarians or paleo-conservatives or constitutionalist, Confucius, Confucian-type liberty lovers, because I do realize the collectivists crave power and crave destroying individuals. Why do you think that the collectivists, the authoritarians, have such a vitriolic hatred of families, of male masculinity, of independent beauty and freedom and wealth? It's just so alien to those of us. I'm not putting us on a pedestal. I'm just saying who I am, who you are. I crave liberty. I crave the animating contest of competition. I crave diversity and real dynamic human spirit. And I would be embarrassed to use tactics against my competition to try to shut them down. But in this authoritarian world now, it's more than just liberalism, fake liberalism. It's a craven, wicked desire to just cheat and steal. And people think being dishonorable now is a way to get ahead. What do you call this? Just societal rot that we're facing?
This has happened time and again throughout history. And it always ends in the same way. It ends because eventually the totalitarians become so arrogant and so cruel to their fellow men that their fellow men who previously hadn't been able to stand together and unite finally do so and stand up against them. And in fact, going back to your example of what happened in the decades following the French Revolution, when eventually Napoleon emerged as the dictator of France, and then went around doing bilateral country-to-country deals between him and them to lock countries in where he wanted them, then he would invade them. And then they couldn't do anything back because they'd already signed a treaty with him. Eventually, after enough countries had thus been gobbled up by Napoleon, they banded together and stood together against him. And even if the Battle of Waterloo had not been the moment at which he was finally defeated, he had already by then been politically defeated because a grand alliance against him had been formed. And much the same happened really before the Second World War, where countries like Britain refused to get into alliances with other countries against Hitler, because they didn't want another war. Well, of course, nobody wants another war, but the fact was, if they didn't have one, Hitler was going to dominate Europe by exactly the same techniques of a combination of adroit diplomacy and brute force and will that Napoleon had previously used. And Hitler modeled himself very much on Napoleon. And so they did it then, and eventually Hitler pushed it too far, and the world ganged up against him, and he was stopped. Now, the difficulty we now face, Alex, is, as I was saying earlier, a unique situation in which totalitarianism, or groupthink, has gone global. And this globalization of groupthink is an extremely difficult thing to deal with, because to a greater or lesser degree, every country, even in the once freedom-loving Western world, is now part of this. And the entire bureaucratic and governing class knows that it's more than its job is worth to dare to speak out against it. I'm going to give you an example from the University of Delaware, where a communist front group called Greenpeace, which pretends to be an environmental organization, but in fact was taken over by communists, 30 or 40 years ago now, and has been run as a front
And
group.
by the way, their founder is the one that blew the whistle on that and released the documents. That's a fact.
Patrick Moore, who has talked to me about it, and likewise is another founder, the late Eric Ellington, whom I knew well. And interestingly, when I first mentioned on your show some years ago that Eric Ellington, one of the founders of Greenpeace, had said that this had become taken over by the communists, the communists were very angry, and they then got in touch with me to say, well, what evidence do you have that there was anybody called Eric Ellington? And I said, well, his brother is still alive and living in Scotland, where he used to live. Why don't you get in touch with him? So they went quiet after that once they realized there was an Eric Ellington. He was a landscape photographer. He lived partly in Scotland, partly in Jersey. And he said to me very plainly, and he was not a political man, he said, look, we founded the organization to be a genuine environmental organization. That was our intention. Patrick Moore says the same. But, he said, then the communists suddenly took it over, and because we weren't political, we didn't know how to stop them. And within a few years, all of us who had founded it had left, not because we didn't believe we needed a cleaner and safer environment, but because we didn't believe Greenpeace any longer had anything to do with that. Now, this organization wrote to the University of Delaware, it's doing this all the time, and it made an extremely intrusive and elaborate freedom of information request against Professor David Lee Gates, who happens to be a co-author of mine on a recent scientific paper and a bit of a friend. And they began saying, this was 4 years ago now, that they wanted 60 information in 60 different categories about his work on climate change. Now, under the law in the state of Delaware, the first state of the Union, as you know, one of the smallest, and unfortunately controlled largely by the left, Joe Biden's son at the moment is the Attorney General there. They have a freedom of information law, and this was exploited by Greenpeace. And they said, we want information about all this to do with Professor Lee Gates. Now, Professor Lee Gates is not paid by the state of Delaware. He's paid independently by the university, which is itself subsidized separately by the state of Delaware, but his salary is not paid from what comes from the state of Delaware. Or rather, it wasn't. But then, once this freedom of information request came along, only then did the university tell him that for some years it had been allocating part of the funds from the university, from the state of Delaware, towards his salary, and that therefore, and only for that reason, he was subject to the freedom of information law and had to turn over not only all the paperwork that the law required him to, but all his personal paperwork anything to do with the climate that was on his personal computer, his personal work, even if it had nothing to do with state funding, he was still to hand it over.
That is an unprecedented level of invasion of privacy. You know,
and of academic freedom. And the university went on and on and on at it. And there's a really nasty piece of work there called White, Lawrence White. He is the general counsel for the university. He was at Georgetown before. He's been the rounds, and everywhere that he's been, he seems to have moved on rather quickly, shall we say. I won't put it any stronger than that. Anyway, here he is at the University of Delaware, quite a come down from Georgetown. And this unspeakable White says to Lee Gates, you either produce all this documentation, whether or not the law requires it, whether or not it forms part of Greenpeace's request, or you will have infringed a request by a senior officer of the university and you'll be punished for it. He was threatened that if he didn't produce documents which he had no duty under any law to produce, he would be punished by the university.
So just more bullying. I want to shift gears currently into their latest power grabs, because politically they've been exposed. Again, they don't care about any of the real environmental issues. It's just all carbon taxes. They're all making money off it, from Pachari and the UN, moving power plants from England and steel mills in England to India. You've got Al Gore making money off of it. All of this, Obama making money off of it. But they're still just moving forward. Give us the latest on that.
Right. Let me first of all just wrap that up very quickly. I was just about at the end of it there. And I have therefore intervened in this matter of the university. And I have made my own Freedom of Information request saying I want all the paperwork from the unspeakable White about his handling of the affair of Professor Lee Gates and the request from Greenpeace. And so far, the university, including White, wrote to me and he said, I'm not going to give you any information. And so he is now in very big trouble with the law, because the next thing will happen, we'll go to court and we'll drag the unspeakable White into court and make him explain himself and put him in the witness box. And question after question after question, the man will be broken by the end of this process if he has behaved as I'm told he's behaved. And so
the issue is they're going after stuff that you're not allowed to get under FOIA, but then he's not following a FOIA himself.
No, that's right. Absolutely. The double standard is palpable, but they're quite shameless about this. They don't care. They'll justify things by the law if it suits them, and if the law doesn't suit them, they won't comply with it themselves. That's how they are, these people. But the point is that we are now beginning to fight back. Every time they try this on one of my colleagues, we fight back. We're also fighting back against anyone who now produces an open and obvious lie in a scientific paper. And I'm going after at the moment some researchers at the University of Queensland who tried to say that 97% of all scientists in 11,944 papers they reviewed since 1991 had said that most of the warming of recent decades was caused by us, when their own data file that they had themselves marked up showed only 64 papers out of 11,944, 0.5%.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the hoax that polar bears can't swim and penguins are all dying and that the Earth's all dying. I mean, it's just...
What we're now doing is, if you can catch them out in an actual straight lie, then you've got them because it's fraud. And so what we're doing to these people who have committed fraud, here and elsewhere, is we're going after them now with prosecutions. And you see, in Britain, where in some respects, although we're an unconsidered satrapy of the European tyranny by Clark, we still have one or two freedoms the European tyranny has.
I was about to say, by the way, you're not just tooting your horn here. You were able to get Al Gore's movie pulled out of most schools because of all the lies in it. You forced them to...
That, we made the Department of Education circulate I think it was 70 pages of corrective guidance before that film could be shown in any school. So there was a huge victory. Al Gore has never really recovered from it because he was shown to have been essentially a political charlatan who knew nothing about the climate.
Wait a minute. You mean he didn't invent the internet?
Well, who can say, but I doubt it very much. Certainly he was wrong about the climate.
No, I'm being sarcastic. The internet was invented in the 70s. Of course,
he's now regarded as a bit of a joke. Point is, though, that we're now fighting back against these lies, and the way to do it is to go against the individual liars, the individual crooks, the individual people like the unspeakable White, the so-called General Counsel of the University of Delaware, who has quite improperly abused his power and abused his position to try to order a tenured member of the faculty at his university to produce documents in gross interference with his academic freedom when there was no law that empowered him so to demand.
All right, we're going to stay there, Lord Monckton. I want to come back and get into their latest power grabs, though. We've talked about stuff they've been doing, how we're fighting back, but I want to know what their latest schemes are. Warn us coming up. I first got on radio in 1996, and I was just like a mainline libertarian. And all these veterans, government people, you name it, engineers, were educating me because I was on the radio, and nobody else had a show like this in Central Texas. Now it's been syndicated, of course, since 1997. And then has expanded greatly. But the engineers would bring me the documents, the farmers and ranchers who were having their ranches taken in eminent domain for pennies on the dollar, and then the enviro-Nazis that would do it would turn around 5 years later and turn it into condos and mansions and sell 3 acres for $1 million or $2 million. Some cases, half an acre for $3 million on the Colorado River. I watched them take more than 50,000 acres, and I mean, I would come out from the radio studio, and there'd be all these people down there want me to come to their ranches and see what was being taken. I would go cover it. And it was like a James Bond movie, some of the stuff, the harassment I would get, the death threats. We stopped some of it because it's so corrupt, you barely stand up, it falls. I want to hold Lord Monckton 5 minutes to the next hour so he can finish up his statements. I'm just telling the story now that I then went with Mike Hansen. We've got the footage somewhere. We aired it on, back then I had Access TV show in like 97. They had former Dallas Cowboys. They had the head of Bank of America. They had people from the Clinton administration there. When we got into the Smart Growth Conference, I interviewed Michael Dell. And they would laugh at me when my cameras were off and go, of course we know it's a land grab, and would laugh at me. They weren't even liberals or communists. So there's also a component of this of land grabbers and controllers. It's just criminality is the only way to describe it. Lord Monckton, you know, I tell that story because I don't think people realize under Agenda 21, it's a total overthrow. It's a return to feudalism, but it's beyond that. What do you call these people or this system? They're beyond authoritarians. They're really like authoritarians meet con artists. How would you?
What they are is thieves. It's a brilliant scam. Because what they do is they set up this whole environmental thing about how we have to save the planet. It's preached now in every school as though it was some kind of new religion. And then they go around, they say, right, we want to exercise eminent domain over a nice ranch in an attractive area so that we can save the lesser spotted three-toed warbler or something.
No, it's a warbler in Austin. No, it's a warbler. Yeah, you're right.
No, that's right. They'll leave it then for a few years, fallow, and then they'll sell it off. And because they'll just leave enough time so that people have forgotten how it was they came by that land and why they came by it, they sell it off, up go the condos, and they trouser millions, I mean tens of millions, on each ranch, if they're clever about it, in profit. And this goes, and then, of course, a lot of that money goes into the Democrat political party. And, of course, that is why the Democrats and the left generally have taken up this supposed global warming cause. It is because the major funders of their opponents politically were, of course, the fossil fuel companies, the coal companies, the electricity companies. They were all big donors once upon a time to the Republican Party. And so what the left have been doing for many, many years, apart from enriching themselves...
They're shaking the oil companies down because they give more to the left now than the right.
That is exactly the thing. They've terrorized the...
They buy protection money. They buy protection.
Yes, exactly that. By saying, if you don't do things the way we want, we'll shut you down because of global warming. Now, there is no basis for shutting anybody down because of global warming. But if you've got every school kid being trained up by his teachers day after day in all this garbage, of course, eventually people are going to end up...
Sir, do 5 more minutes with us on solutions. Just stay there, please. All right, final segment with Lord Monckton. We'll give you his website here in a moment. You've got the floor, sir, in the 5 minutes we have. Thanks for staying over. I want any other attacks they're involved in we should know about, their latest scams, and then any other solutions. Lord Monckton.
Right. First thing is we're now going to fight back. We're going to fight back in an organized way. We're going to make absolutely sure that these people know that if they are ever dishonest in what they do, we will have them prosecuted for it. And in the United Kingdom, we still have the freedom to mount a private prosecution even when the corrupt institutions of the state refuse to do so. I'm actually quietly involved in a case at the moment, and because I'm involved in it, I'm not going to give too many details, except to say that it involves a researcher at a university who contributed to a scientific paper whose results he flagrantly misrepresented in a manner where he could not but have realized he was misrepresenting it. It was deliberate. He deliberately misrepresented those results with the intention of maintaining the enormous funding that particular university gets for its work on climate change, and of impoverishing those of us who have to pay the massive extra money for energy bills that you were talking about earlier. Now that, under the British definition of the fraud law, which has been changed several times recently, it used to be a common law definition, but now it's a statutory definition, is a fraud in two directions. First of all, it's a fraud because the guy has made up scientific results and then misstated them. And then it's a fraud because not only has he made that misrepresentation, so it's fraud by misrepresentation.
He's getting money.
But it's also fraud. Well, he himself probably isn't making any more money by perpetrating the fraud than he would otherwise. The point is he's causing losses to taxpayers. And under the British definition, if you cause a loss to somebody else, even if you don't expect to benefit from it yourself, that is still a fraud. And so it's a fraud also by abuse of public trust. Scientists are paid a lot of money to present their results fairly. That doesn't mean they're always going to get things right. But it does mean that if they get a result, they present that result accurately, and they do not present...
People in the professional class are held to a higher standard.
And they are indeed. Under the new law, that is the case. Now, the first step I have taken is to give the university the chance, I'm not going to name it, the chance to sort its act out. And in the end, it worked its way all the way up to the Vice-Chancellor, who refused to take action. He is now in the frame for fraud, as is his university, as is the researcher who caused the trouble in the first place, as are the 3 professors who were involved in hearing the misconduct case and finding in favor of the student who was concerned when the evidence against that person was overwhelming. All of them are now facing jail for fraud.
So you're saying the way to go after him is get on the offense. I agree. In the 1 minute we've got left.
Absolutely that. And so the paperwork has gone to the Serious Fraud Office. It's looking at it at the moment. My legal advisors who are handling this for me have said that the likelihood is that they won't want to deal with it because it doesn't fit into their usual way of doing things, nor will the local police in the county concerned, which again I won't name. But the moment they have actually said no to us, I am then free, as you are not in the United States, to walk into any court in England and Wales, any magistrate, and say, here's the evidence. I say that a crime has been committed. I have tried to get the public authorities to do something about it, and they won't. Please will you, exercising your powers under Section 1 of the Justice of the Peace Act 1361, order them to investigate, or, in the alternative, allow me to prosecute. And then I can prosecute directly myself. And that's what I'm now going to do. So plain and so appalling a lie has been told, so catastrophic an effect as it had on politics. Our own ministers are citing this paper and as part of the reason why they're inflicting ever higher taxes on us as a result.
I'll tell you what, we got to go to break again. Come back and finish it. This is important. All right, I'm going to go over some of the latest geopolitical news, economic news, when Lord Monckton leaves us in about 5 minutes. He's really on the offense right now, just like happened with ClimateGate and those documents coming out. There's new ones coming out all the time now where they're major universities getting caught organizing fraud. They know the Earth's not been warming for 17 years. A lot of data shows it's been cooling the last few years. But regardless, folks, I don't romanticize the oil companies. I don't romanticize any of this. Most of the big oil companies like BP and Dutch Roll Shell, I see them funding all the environmental ads. So they basically are working with this. This has been the decided program. I get zero money from any corporation or petrol group, and any time I talk about our coal power plants being shut down, you must work for them. Well, actually, coal is generally diametrically opposed to oil, because coal's even cheaper than oil. Our power prices are exploding. Same thing in England. Lord Monckton, I know you want to finish up with how you're prosecuting these people, and you've done a lot of that in the past and made them stop showing Al Gore's movie. It was proven fraud and all the rest of it, and I agree that's a key way to go after him. But joining us in these last few minutes, finish up with that. But I want to ask you, the larger issue of, I mean, just for the general public, why does the establishment want to bankrupt the West? Why are they moving everything to China and India? Nothing against China and India, but I mean, they won't even have a market to sell to soon at the level of economic downturn. I mean, I go to the mall. It used to be totally full just 3-4 years ago. It's empty. I go to movies. They're empty. Used to be full. I go to most restaurants I know have been closing. Austin is a boom city, the #1 boom city in the United States. And if it's not a trendy area or where government people are at, or where some of the nouveau riche live, it's stalling out. Most of my family that were middle class across the border having trouble. I mean, I can see the country becoming poor. I can see these policies directly shutting us down. Why does the establishment want to do it? I mean, I know about Cloward and Piven, and then I want you to...
What happened is, worldwide, the establishment in the West is looking towards global institutions of government. And everyone who now wants to get into politics is playing to become president of the European Union, president of the UN, general secretary of the UN. They want to be on the world stage now. This is it's this global aspect which I keep referring to. They don't care how many people they tread on, how many people they make bankrupt, how many people's ranches they take over and build condos on. They don't care as long as they take charge globally. It's the same with our prime ministers now. They all, the moment they stop being prime minister here, they queue up to get jobs in the European Union or the UN. That's where the real ambition now is. And because these institutions at global level are not elected by anyone, they are all totalitarian institutions by nature. Because it's only if you have an injection of democracy into a system that you have any hope of getting anything recognizable as freedom, except by sheer luck. And because we have not yet made sure that the international institutions that represent us are elected, these totalitarian institutions are increasingly taking real power from countries where you still elect your governments, as you do, for instance, in the United States. We don't in Britain anymore. We have elections, but they're for mere clerks. We don't elect the people who govern us. Those are the unelected bureaucrats of the European dictatorship. But you still have elections, but it doesn't matter who you elect. What Obama has been doing is going around signing foreign treaties, because under your Constitution, he worked out that the Constitution is an obstacle to him, and the way around it was in the Constitution itself. If he signs a foreign treaty, that doesn't just bind this Congress. Even if he's voted out of office and nobody wants that particular provision anymore, once it's in an international treaty, often made with just one other left-wing country doing the same thing, then that becomes part of the permanent international law, and you don't have the power unilaterally, even if you all vote for it, to repudiate that treaty. So that's what he's doing. And increasingly, this battle is going to have to be fought at the international level. And there are two ways one could do this. One can try oneself to take over these institutions of totalitarianism, but they won't let anyone like you or me anywhere near it. You have to subscribe to this culture of corruption in order to get away with it. What we're going to have to do, Alex, it's very ambitious, I'm just beginning to work it out now with my friend, is to establish parallel, independent, democratically elected institutions, a new United Nations that is elected, a new World Bank that is elected, so that no longer will these old totalitarian institutions have any money, any power, any standing, or any right to interfere in how we live. We're going to need a new constitution of freedom internationally, not just in individual states. It's desirable there too, but internationally. We now have to club together in a way that, as we were saying at the outset, we do not, as individualists, naturally do. And so I'm proposing to found an institute. It's just going to be called Freedom. And it's going to be open to anyone in the world who subscribes to democratic principles of government, so that the power resides firmly, as it does in the United States Constitution, at least in theory, in the hands not of the government, but of the people, who can make and unmake governments at will. That's what we're going to have to do, and we're going to have to do it quite fast, because freedom is dying very rapidly. Your Republican Party is not fighting for it. The Conservative Party here has abandoned it, which is why today the United Kingdom Independence Party is about to become the largest British party in the European Parliament. And it's going to be such a stunning result for UKIP that the totalitarians will be rocked back on their heels, because we have been quietly building for years to make absolutely sure that at least on our continent, freedom does not die.
No, I know, and I follow the news as your party that you founded 20-something years ago, or whatever it was, explodes in popularity and is duplicated across Europe. They're openly calling for shutting you down, saying you're racist when you're the opposite of it. I mean, saying UKIP is, and just really using classic Marxist tactics. And that's what I wanted to ask you, Lord Monckton, is that clearly, I mean, I saw last year where the French socialists, to a man almost, and a woman, are exempt from the EU taxes, as the EU bureaucrats are. I mean, total discrimination, classical tyranny, and that then they almost all have Swiss bank accounts and don't pay their national taxes, but have raised taxes on the nouveau riche and wealthy in France to 101% to bankrupt their competition. I mean, this is a lawless hyper-tyranny, and as Nigel Farage, your colleague and leader of the party, becomes more and more popular, to see them so threatened, it shows that they can be defeated. But as you said, we have to accurately state how radically bad they are. But people in England, people in Europe, people here in the U.S. tend to be more gentlemanly. Conservatives tend to be more friendly, and we don't want to come out and say these are bloodthirsty tyrants, but they are. So how do you up the rhetoric to match the reality is what I'm saying.
Well, what we've done in UKIP, and we've done it very quietly but with increasing success, we have a brilliant leader, Nigel Farage, who is an ordinary working bloke who just decided he wanted his country back. And for years, he got nowhere. He went round all the pubs in the southeast of England, one every night, talking to people saying, we can't let this go on. And they were all horrified at what he was telling them about how this political class was trying to take away all their democratic rights and powers. And they were appalled. And gradually, he built UKIP into an enormous and very successful fighting force. It's about to do very, very well in the European elections, precisely because all the other parties here in Scotland, all the other parties have ganged up against us. And they've said, whatever you do, don't vote UKIP. We're all agreed we don't want UKIP. Of course they are, because they don't want their gravy train to hit the buffers. They don't want it to tip into the gulch. They want to go on being able to prey upon us, to put up their ludicrous wind farms all over the beautiful parts of Scotland, to run everybody out of money with excessive power prices, to make everybody the slaves of a tyranny that they cannot remove and cannot hold to account. And we have simply said, here is what they're actually doing to you. We've described it. And we have used the kind of language that conservatives don't usually use. We've called them tyrants. We've called them communists. We've called them exactly what they are.
That's it. The only way to defeat them, they always say, turn down your rhetoric, you'll be successful. No, that's why we fail. We must go all the way. We must tell the truth.
Of course, one has to be sensible in the way one puts the point across. As I've said to you before, I regard you as being just about on the outer fringe of where one can safely be. Any further, and you're off into outer space. But the thing is, yes, there has to be a certain common sense in how we express ourselves, but we can be a great deal more vigorous than your average limp-wristed panty waist from the GOP National Committee is. We can do a lot more than they are doing. And in UKIP, we're showing...
Well, sure, but let me respond to that. I mean, look, I need to be a radicalizer and go all the way, get the barbed wire first to shake people out of their days, and then they can come along and find Ron Paul and Rand Paul and Lord Monckton.
Exactly, and you're quite right about that, and I fully understand your place in the spectrum, as it were. But the point is this, Alex. You're doing very good work, and there's no doubt about this. You have a massive audience. and a devoted audience. I get correspondence every time I'm on the air with you because people like to hear the Monckton dimension on all this. And they are now waiting for leadership to go to the next stage. They're waiting for what we have done in UKIP to be done not just in individual nations.
And the establishment admits they're worried about an American-style UKIP party. I mean, that's what
Of course they are, and with good reason, because if there were one, it would have much greater chance of success than ever it had here in the UK, because you are instinctive libertarians in the United States. The vast majority of your population are libertarians, not, of course, in the central cities where they're all on government handouts and paid for by Obama, but everybody else, all the working people.
Absolutely. Sir, we're out of time. Scienceandpublicpolicy.org. Thanks for all the time. Keep doing a great job. There he goes from England, Lord Christopher Monckton. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com. Stay with us. Nigel Farage almost died in a plane crash. The pilot is basically brain damaged now and can hardly talk, I'm told. Those guys are real. And believe me, the establishment doesn't like it. The establishment is in overdrive, and it's so frustrating to see how the big oil companies predominantly, except for ExxonMobil, the biggest, are openly for about 25 years funding the carbon tax movement. It was Ken Lay on record with Al Gore in 1995 that had a group of meetings at the White House, more than 20 of them, there's documentaries made on this, to develop the carbon tax scam. So I guess that was 19 years ago, to be technical. And then when I'm against carbon taxes and all this, you work for the oil companies. You work for the oil companies. You work for the oil companies. The Koch brothers. I saw some CNN special on their website this weekend that was like, inside billionaire money, the Koch brothers, the Koch brothers. I've had Greg Palast, who's a real liberal on, former federal regulator. He will tell you the Koch brothers give as much money to the Democrats as they do to the Republicans until about the last decade, when they weren't at the top of the globalist food chain as billionaires, so their businesses started getting shut down, so they started funding some of the conservative groups. I get zero Koch brother money, but I have people walk to me on the street and go, I know you work for the Koch brothers. I'm like, no, it's the Vatican and the Jews or the Masons. I work for justice. I work for a good future. I don't want bad mojo, bad karma. You reap what you sow. Tony Montana said, I have never done anything to anybody that didn't have it coming to them. And I don't enjoy going after people that are attacking me. I'm forced to do it sometimes. But I mean, the left has the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, George Soros, Bill and Melinda Gates, Warren Buffett, they have everything. They're the establishment. That's why everyone goes along with them. They have trillions. And they're like, oh, should the billionaires be able to give money? Wall Street gave almost 2-to-1 to Obama in the last 2 elections. Almost 2-to-1. Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan. And I'm just sick of it. I get zero money from Wall Street, zero money from the Koch brothers, zero, 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 zero. And the Democratic Party is drenched in globalist money with carbon taxes and Obamacare that the Republican leadership is part of. They're all in it together. And all they can point at is the Koch brothers that literally financed Bill Clinton with Tyson. Don Tyson, what's the chicken king's name? I used to know everything about him. Can't remember his name now. And I'm just sick of it. How they act like they're anti-establishment. I tuned into MSNBC last night to see what they're up to. And they were like bashing the big banks. I mean, they're financed by them. But their solutions weren't return Glass-Steagall. Their solutions weren't write off the derivatives. Their solutions were the evil Republicans are in with the big banks. Yeah, and so are the Democrats. You know who isn't for the banker bailouts? It's the real Tea Party. Yeah, Don Tyson, poultry tycoon, dies at 80. I didn't even know that. When did he die? 2011. I wonder I hadn't heard of Don Tyson in a while. Boy, that guy was a gangster. Died at 80. I mean, you talk about a Dixie Mafia gangster, boy. He was a real deal. And there's all these pseudo-intellectuals that just run around and perseverate on one factoid or another. And, you know, oh my gosh, you don't want carbon taxes? You don't like Obama? You work for the Koch brothers? We're better than you. We don't work for the Vatican like you. We don't work for Israel like you. We don't work for the Koch brothers and the oil companies like you. Riding your horse to work in Texas. Oh, Alex, you're pro-gun because you get money from the gun industry. I should be getting money from them. I should be getting money from the NRA. I should be getting money from Gun Owners of America. I should be getting money from Smith & Wesson. I tell you, you should be giving them money. You should be giving money to the pro-gun groups because let me tell you something. If we weren't here, we'd have a civil war with them coming after your guns right now. We didn't have Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, they would have gotten their gun ban last year. These people are coming down on us, and they've got to be defeated. They've got to be stopped. Stay with me. Mayor Bloomberg says so. So in Austin and San Francisco and New York, they're coming in and saying, we'll only give you a housing authorization to build buildings under Budget of 21 that have 200 square foot multi-person dwellings. The individuals get 100 square foot, and they're now saying those are too lavish. And again, the general public thinks of it from the perspective of a nice person because you're nice people. You're like, well, what's wrong with folks having 200 square feet if that's all they can afford? I'm going to explain this again. In their own actuaries, they want, as renter owners like Bloomberg, they want to charge you more for less. I'm going to say that again. That's what feudalism is. While they, who steal all the money, live in giant palatial facilities, in most cases that are exempt. They run the bureaucracy. That's the New World Order. And they're just a bunch of crooks. I mean, they're not liberals. I mean, I am so sick of Angelina Jolie and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and all of them. These people are sickening filth on their moral high horses trying to run my life and your life. I've had enough of Merkel. I've had enough of hollandaise sauce in France. I've had enough of Cameron. I've had enough of Boner. All of them. These people are running our civilization into the ground, and they can't believe how successful they've been robbing everyone. So they're festooning secret police everywhere in armored vehicles and helicopters and checkpoints and 25 million bullets for the TSA and every form of out-of-control insanity you could imagine. Because no one has stood up to them. We've all run into people in our lives that we let push us around to the point of they just go completely out of control. And they do this mind game where they sit there and intimidate us until we just think that that's the way it is. It's not supposed to be that way. And I'm not trying to get angry today. I just look at all this news. I got hundreds of articles I haven't even covered yet. And it literally makes me angry. I mean, every 10 minutes while I've been talking, it just pops in my head that JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, came out and said, your patients are insane, you know, if they believe in conspiracy theories. And then, as God, they said that, and by as God, as if what they say is just fact, that cell phones aren't linked to brain cancer. And anyone that is worried about cell phones is a raving lunatic who needs to be locked up in an insane asylum. They call it health behaviors and a sign that you're mentally ill. You know what, JAMA? You're a bunch of kleptocratic scum. And there are literally over 1,000 mainline prestigious studies saying it's massively increasing different types of brain tumors. London Guardian this week said if you use a cell phone 15 hours a week, you are more than double the chance of getting one type of brain tumor alone. You people are criminals, okay? You're just like the people back in the 40s and 50s with TV ads. And we've pulled these up before. We could probably find them. Going, Kent cigarettes. You know, doctors recommend, 4 out of 5 doctors recommend Kent cigarettes if you've got a sore throat. Helps the lungs. Feeling down, having got a cough, smoke more Camels. You know what? My grandmother and my grandfather both basically died from lung cancer, one of them from complications from it. And you know what? I don't want the government involved in it. If you want to smoke them, that's your issue. But let me tell you something. Those cigarette companies knew in the 20s, in rat studies with smoke pumped in, that it was giving them lung cancer. Okay? And you know, I mean, I'll be honest. I have an instinct to want to kick those scientists' butts. There it is. 20,679 physicians say Luckies are less irritating. It's toasted. Your throat protection against irritation and against cough. Lucky Strikes from the 1930s, a drugstore ad. We just put it on screen if you're a radio listener. You know, Barney Rubble, he's got a sore throat. He smokes a cigarette. I mean, I'm ready to kick some. I mean, and again, I'm not saying I'm a tough guy. I want to kick butt. I want to turn the table over right now, ladies and gentlemen. Now scientific evidence on effects of smoking. Chesterfield helps your lungs. You understand the tobacco plant pulls up radioactive isotopes out of the soils that are in volcanic soils that tobacco grows well in, and that if you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day for 20 years, it's the equivalent of living inside Chernobyl for a year. And I boil that down to a layman's statement, but that's basically what I've read. You can look it up. Look up radioactive isotopes in tobacco. And again, folks, I have smoked cigarettes. I have chewed tobacco. I have, I played baseball. And I mean, let me tell you, the coaches let you chew tobacco when I was like, 12 years old if I was playing baseball. Levi Garrett. We would take it with us and stick it in our mouth. Okay, so listen, I'm not on some kick here. If you want to smoke tobacco, that's your issue. My thing is it's a load of crap that it's good for you. And Philip Morris used the same propaganda. We just showed a Philip Morris magazine ad from the 40s that it's scientific that global warming, 9,000 million scientists all agree it's imminent. You're dead if you don't pay Al Gore money, and shut down your power plants and move them to China that are totally dirty. All scientists agree. No one believes that humans aren't causing global warming and we're all dead if we don't pay Al Gore money. It's a total hoax, and I know you know that. Can we play the Everything is Wonderful liner intro that the guys down in our Knoxville affiliate made for us? We like that. By the way, if you're an affiliate and you got great promo people there, you are welcome to send it to Show Tips or to our producers. If it doesn't get to us, just send it 5 times and we'll get it. It's not the crew's fault. We just get, I don't know, let's not exaggerate, 15,000 emails a day or something. On a big day, it's like sometimes like 2,000. But the point is, it varies. And we have a lot of station promos we've been sent. And you can even put your station in the promo. We'll air that as well as part of the promo for this show. Just a little idea there. And so many listeners on YouTube and InfoWars getting mad at me. I see this. Somebody's just getting this out there. Like, Alex didn't respond to my email, and I'm mad at him. Or Alex didn't get back with us on this. I'm overwhelmed. I apologize. I mean, I can't even cover any of this news at this point. I just, it makes me too upset. I'm not lying to people. They put cancer viruses in the vaccines. The microwave ovens are splattering your whole kitchen with radiation. That's on record. And frying the food. The statistics all show it. The intestinal disorders, the bowel disorders, the brain disorders, the blood disorders, the lung disorders. I mean, we are dying. And it's only just begun. Because our life cycle's 74 years. Our reproductive cycle on average is about 20. Guinea pigs within 3 cycles are 99% sterile when they're fed one type of Monsanto GMO corn in a major study. You can look it up. We sell books that have all studies on the rats and the rest of it. The rats, the guinea pigs. It's the same in all the mammals. Hair growing on their mouth, testicles on top of their heads, I mean, dude, listen, we're now 2 generations into this. This has just begun. We're dead already. You know, when Spock in Wrath of Khan knows that the ship's not going to make it if he doesn't go down to the reactor and save everybody, and then they're about to open the compartment when he's been radiated, and they say, you can't help him, he's dead already. I'm telling you, folks, what we're doing now is just so some remnant of us makes it, okay? That's why the globalists don't care. They're already about to go into the 3rd generation of killing us. Soon it's going to be half the babies are born retarded. Soon it's going to be it's hell on earth with these people. They are literally shoving us into a meat grinder. And there's all these little trendy cult members everywhere telling me everything's awesome, everything's great. No, it's not. And, you know, people like Lord Monckton is a great guy, can get on, and he knows I can take it, and I like it. I don't mind it. You know, and saying, well, you do go off into space sometimes. Well, we are in space, folks. And I know the enemy program, and I've studied it, and I'm going to say how horrible it is. Look at how successful UKIP's been by not compromising.
Let's make this a year of action. That's what most Americans want.
Raising the debt ceiling does not increase our debt. Nobody is listening to your telephone calls.
The debate is settled. Climate change is a fact. And if people can't trust not only the executive branch, but also don't trust Congress and don't trust federal judges, then we're going to have some problems here.
What difference at this point does it make?
You know what the globalists are always talking about? I mean, I saw it just a few months ago. Who was the world leader a few months ago said, you know, if aliens invaded the earth, it would help unify us for world government. It was like all over the newspapers. I forget who said it. But Ronald Reagan said it. Khrushchev said it. Clinton just said it a few weeks ago. That's who said it. See if you can cue it up. It was Clinton. Yeah, that's right. Bill Clinton. Good memory, CJ. I couldn't remember then. Who was the other one? Yeltsin said it. Who was the guy before Yeltsin? I'm just having one of those moments right now. Gorbachev, yeah. They all say it. Well, if aliens invaded, there it is, Bill Clinton, alien attack would unite us. I probed Area 51. Area 51 is a toxic waste dump, mainly. And then they've got Black Ops space aircraft there, and that was declassified this year. And they were like, oh, you conspiracy theorists are discredited. There aren't aliens. I'm not the people saying there's aliens out there. I've been saying for 19 years on air, it's a skunk works operation. And now it's admitted. But the point is, there's obviously Bill Clinton on the Tonight Show talking about that. And that's the kind of stuff they fantasize about, is having the outside threat. But you know, let's say there was some outside threat. I would be for humanity unifying against it. I'm not for the humanity unifying and using our instinct to unify to be under these tyrants. And it's just these people do not have our best interest at heart, and they are flagrantly anti-human. And just like perverts get off on defiling innocent children, the globalists get off on defiling humanity, defiling the plants, the animals. The globalists are butchering the Earth's genetic code and biosphere, doing irreparable harm, and then saying it doesn't matter, we will race ahead of the problems we've created with the singularity and fix it all.
If we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised. I just hope that it's not like Independence Day.
Yeah, right.
That it's a conflict.
Well, now we have friendly
maybe the only way to unite this incredibly divided world of ours.
Yeah, I love how they try to divide us so they can control us, and then bitch and complain and say, you need to do what we say and be united. We've divided you, dumbed you down, got you fighting over all this bull. And then now you need to follow us, Bill Clinton. Just a total miscreant dirtbag. I didn't take any calls today. I'm going to try to take a lot of calls tomorrow. Yeah. You have to back it up, though. It's when he says he's dead already. That's my analogy. But good job finding that clip so quick. It's when he goes down into the reactor and he's going to try to get him out and save him. He goes, look, he's dead already. And that's why people need to just get over death. Even if they weren't hitting us with anthropogenic, soft-kill weapons at every level, you're going to die. Just like when you were 5, you never thought Christmas was coming in 3 months to get that new bike, but it came. And then now a year goes by like a week went by when you were 5 years old. You're going to die. You're going to have a heart attack driving home. There are people listening to this show right now that will die this week. We have millions of listeners. You're going to have a stroke and die. You're going to have a heart attack. You're going to die in a car wreck. You're going to be T-boned this week. Some of you listening are going to be dead. How are you going to live your life? What are you going to do now? Because I'm telling you, the whole species is going down the tubes with a bunch of psychopaths who think they're gods and better than us and separate. Oh, they're separate, all right. They are psychopaths. They are sociopaths. They are fearful cowards that lust after power. It's a different mix and combination of these people, but they are the scum of the earth. And if you don't learn to recognize them as new listeners, if we don't become radicalized against them, it's over, okay? They will win because they're unified and they're crazy. It's crazy to go on air and say your kids belong to the state, MSNBC. It's crazy to say it's racist, as Jay Rockefeller said, if you don't accept Obamacare. It's crazy to say if you built a business, you didn't build it. It's crazy to try to give newborn babies dozens of shots on record that are dumbing them down. It's crazy to put hydrofluorosilicic acid in the water. It's crazy. By the way, speaking of that, I just keep meaning to say this. If a fraction of our audience would just buy the ProPure G2 filters that are the best gravity-fed stainless steel filters out there to cut the glyphosates, the fluoride, all of it, blow away the competition, we could fund an incredible operation that would literally go to the next level pretty much instantly. I'm not complaining. You've been very supportive. We appreciate it. But this is the highest quality filters, the best out there, the lowest price. You need it. You should. How many of you are procrastinating and still letting your kids drink tap water? How many of you haven't put a shower filter on? We got some of the best prices on those. How many of you? It's a win-win. You fund our operation and you buy high-quality filters. Stop procrastinating. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. InfoWarsStore.com. I want to see everybody call and get the ProPure systems, the Life Straws, all of it. InfoWarsStore.com. InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. I mean, the procrastination needs to end on every front. I want you to tell 10 people a day about this show and other shows that are fighting tyranny. Get aggressive. Yeah, by the way, speaking of artificial scarcity, a lowering of standard of living, 200 square foot coffin apartments that cost what a 5,000 square foot would, 10 years ago. So government and the globalist can control more and more. Texas town closed to toilet to tap loop. Is this our future water supply? And they go on to say that Austin has been doing such a good job saving water that we're now going to get toilet water recycled. And again, it's good to save water and not waste it. But they just want you to not waste it to double, triple charge you. Lake Travis, they give more water than the rice farmers want. I don't want to get off in a jag about this. I've got all this serious geopolitical news to hit. But briefly, folks, here's that clip from the parable or allegory. What's the proper term to describe it where I connect some real-world event to something in fiction? A parallel. Drawing a parallel to Wrath of Khan. I'm not really a big Star Trek fan, but that's the best Star Trek movie, in my opinion. Is Wrath of Khan is actually pretty entertaining because I like the actors involved. Who's the Hispanic actor? He was on Fantasy Island. He's a great actor. Yes, Ricardo Montalban. Is he still alive? The guy's amazing. Anyways, I see some of the old movies in the 40s and 50s and 60s. That guy's a really good actor. Anyways, long story short, we're dead already in the New World Order. It's a future without humans, the end of us. Are we going to just roll over to whatever the mainstream television says, or are we real? Can we get outside of it and realize that if we don't stop this, there's no future? The whole ship of humanity is going to go down. Here's the clip.
No, you'll flood the whole compartment. You'll die. He's dead already.
But again, the globalists sell us on the idea that, oh, you need to give yourself up to the collective to defend humanity. Well, yes, individually you can make the decision for humanity to do whatever it takes to help others. That's a normal instinct that God gave us. But they take our prime directive to do unto others as we'd have them do unto us and lay down your life for your brother, Christ's golden rule. And they turn it around and say, give up everything for the collective, but that's only giving into their evil plan. They're not actually trying to get you to sacrifice yourself and your freedom to build a better world. They're doing it because they're a bunch of greedy bastards. When Obama tells Africa, you can't have air conditioning or cars, you need to be poor, when he just get 15 aircraft land and it's $50 million a day and red carpets and all these stupid Hollywood people. People say, oh, you just don't like Hollywood because you haven't been accepted by it. Hey, I'm nationwide, like ZZ Top says. Dallas, Texas, Hollywood. I could be in movies all over the place right now, ladies and gentlemen, and I have refused it because it's crap.
You are listening
it's dirty
to
rags.
GCN.
I want history. I want freedom. I want to go to the stars. I want you to win, and I want scum to be trodden underfoot.